Hello and welcome back to another reading of my retelling of Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Last time we did the first chapter. Today we're doing the second chapter, unsurprisingly. The title of this chapter is Understanding. The first chapter we left off after the discovery of the Forest Temple's library. And, let's just dive straight back into it. Chapter 2, Understanding. We knew that once we had discovered the Forest Temple's library, our work would hardly be done, yet even then we hadn't imagined the sheer scale of the task which would lie ahead of us. The past days we have spent exploring the library, which turned out to span most of the entire first floor, plus the entirety of the basement underneath it. At the first sight of the sheer mass of tangled roots, vines, shattered bits of masonry, decaying furniture and everything else we could see on the floor by the light from our lanterns, I felt glad that we had followed Serious advice and not resumed exploring the library without a proper source of light. Once we had gained an overview of the task ahead, we cleared out a section on the first floor of the library to use for storing and sorting of any books and manuscripts we could salvage. As it turns out, even after a few days of work, this looks to be a rather impressive collection, forcing us to make more and more room on the floor. Having dragged a few of the bookshelves and tables which were still in a usable state to this part of the floor, we used these to keep the things organized. The past days seemed to blur together in a series of choking on the dust that seemed to be clinging to each and every object we lifted up, scaring away lots of small critters, insects and spiders hiding underneath them, with them sometimes scaring us at least as much. By now we have finally managed to sort through a sizable collection of books and manuscripts, while clearing away some of the growth covering a few of the large library windows. After cleaning the windows, we thus freed up, and with a table placed next to them, we now have enough light to read a book by, saving us from using lanterns all the time. The place is beginning to look positively cozy by now, even if it still smells like wet forest soil with a bit of mold mixed into it. I look up from the book which I'm trying to decipher and allow my eyes to rest for a moment while I stare through the window in front of me at the trees and vegetation outside. I find myself wondering what the last people who looked through these windows many decades ago would have seen. To a forest, even a single growth season is already a long time, let alone 100 seasons or more. In the intervening years, entire trees could have grown from seedling to fully grown trees, to have succumbed to disease or AIDS, reduced to its elementary elements by the forest, constantly reshaping the look of the forest. What would have been a field of carefully tended grass fields and flower beds would be beyond recognition in just half a century, having been reclaimed by the forest. It certainly makes one consider the timescales pertaining to this temple's history, making its construction, which has allowed it to survive reasonably intact for so long, very admirable. Now that we have reached this point in restoring the Forest Temple, I find myself reflecting on what we have accomplished so far and the amount of work which still lies ahead of us. I still feel that it is worth it. After all, the Forest Temple represents a major part of the history of the Deku Forest, which is the home of Ascokiri. It would take all of us quite a few years to repair the Forest Temple and the grounds around it, but in the end it would restore with it many years of history, making it a worthy investment in my eyes. Returning my attention to the book in front of me, I try to imagine the person who wrote it. Would he or she have imagined the work being read again after so many years? The book doesn't list an author, but it was probably written by one of the Hylians who lived in the Forest Temple back then. It details some of the rituals and ceremonies performed at the Forest Temple, which included the tending of the grounds. As the temple was seen as an extension of the forest, it couldn't be like a scar, keeping the healthy tissue at bay, but should feel as much a part of a forest as the trees itself. The forest would therefore gradually merge into the ground surrounding the building, with the same wild flowers and other plants seen in open spots in the forest growing in seemingly random places, yet tended in such a way that they connected the natural formation of the forest with the artificial construction of the stone building. It must have been a truly impressive sight to walk around the temple in those days. I'm sure that this book will be immensely useful in recreating those grounds. Getting up, I put a book on a pile of books relevant to the reconstruction of the temple, a pile which seems to be the best measurement of our progress so far. I definitely think that the two of us can be proud of what we have accomplished in so little time. Found another useful book? A voice asked behind me. Turning around, I smile at Saria, who is standing behind me with a pile of books in her arms. I think so, yes. This one was mostly about the tending of the grounds around the temple and the design concept behind it. It should help us a lot. Saria nods and proceeds to put the books he's holding down on the table which holds the unsorted books. As he turns towards me, she returns the smile I gave her. You feel like eating lunch now? Saria asked. Realizing that we have been in here for what must have been an entire morning, I eagerly agree. Together we walk towards the entrance of the temple, and to our favorite spot at the top of the stairs. After we finish enjoying the fresh outside air and unpack our lunches, we sit down and dig into the food while discussing this morning's newest discoveries. After a while though, I suddenly see something moving towards us from inside the forest. Focusing on it, I realize it is one of the Kokiri, and he is in an incredible hurry. Saria, having caught my stare, also looks at the figure, who has now reached the bottom of the stairs and begins to climb upwards towards us. It is Hakon, one of the younger Kokiri boys. His sweat-streaked face is covered with dirt, his are his clothes which are torn and ripped, as though he has been running all the way from the village and has fallen many times in his haste. I begin to feel very uneasy at his unusual sight. Prodding Saria, who seems to be just as shocked as me, I get up and prepare to walk towards Hakon. Saria, putting down the food she was holding, does the same. As we get close to Hakon, he basically collapses at our feet. Helping him up the stairs to a more comfortable place to rest, Saria offers him some water, which he easily accepts, gulping it down with most of it flowing down his chin again. When he seems to have calmed down somewhat, he suddenly looks at Saria and me with eyes that are filled with unspeakable horror. But they, everyone, captured, he trembles as though reliving a horrible experience. I got away but need help. Shuddering, he collapses, clearly exhausted. Carefully putting his head down on the sun-warmed stones, I look up at Saria. We both see the same thoughts in each other's gaze. After discussing the little we've learned from Hakon so far, we decided something terrible must have happened at the village. Before we can take action, we really have to learn more from Hakon, however. After a few moments of calling his name and splashing his face with water, he slowly opens his eyes, to immediately attempt to get up as though trying to get away from something. Grabbing him by the arms, Saria and I gently stop him before easing him back onto the stones. It's alright, we're your friends. You're safe here. Nobody will harm you, Saria tells him, gradually managing to calm him down. What happened at the village, Hakon? I ask. If we are to do something, we need to know exactly what is going on. At hearing my words, Hakon turns towards me and swallows heavily, as though preparing to force some words while he would much rather just run away. He sighs and takes a deep breath. It all came so suddenly. First a huge shadow covering the forest where the great ache tree is, then the sound of many legs running through the tree tops, then the scream started. Here Hakon starts trembling again, as with Saria puts a comforting arm around him. Relaxing somewhat, he continues. I could see some Kokiri getting dragged into the trees by something unseen. Then I and others caught sight of some of them, huge spiders, standing as tall as Kokiri, if not more. They must have caught everyone by now, except for me. Hakon closes his eyes, clearly exhausted from reliving those events. Gently shaking him to keep him awake, Saria tells him that he can rest inside the forest temple, in one of the smaller rooms that are still reasonably intact. Supporting Hakon, we bring him to a room with a small window which lets in enough of the bright evening sunlight to brighten up the room. Feeling comforted, Hako falls asleep as soon as we put him down on some old fabric which may once have been curtains. Quietly we leave the room and return to the main hall. Before we get there though, I suddenly remember something useful if we're going to face danger. Halting my pace and turning to Saria, who's giving me a slightly puzzled look, I motion her to follow me. Not understanding but nodding and following me regardless, we both make our way to a remote corner of the temple, down many hallways until we stand in front of a heavy oaken door. It looks to be completely intact, having been shielded from the elements by the rest of the temple structure. Lacking a door handle, the only way to open it is using a key. I look at Saria, who still bears a puzzled look, and produce a key from one of her pockets. Smiling, I tell her I read about this room in one of the manuscripts, and found this key right where it said it would be in the library. Come, let's not waste any time, and explore the contents of this room. Half expecting the lock to be so rusted that opening would prove futile, I put a key into the lock and try to turn it. To my and Saria's surprise, the key turns easily, and the clear clicking sound can be heard. I pull on the key and the door easily opens, granting us access to a medium-sized room with slits in the wall which allow some light into the room. As our eyes get used to the gloom inside, we can see weapons and armor in any conceivable form and size, enough to equip at least a few dozen people. Walking into the room and making a quick inspection reveals that while the weapons and the armor are mostly in an acceptable state, they are clearly made for adult Hylians, not child-sized Kokiri. Almost despairing, my gaze is suddenly drawn to a not very imposing sword compared to the others in the room. Hanging on the wall in its scabbard, it is much smaller in size, yet the way it is put in clear sight, with spacing between it and the other weapons, it has to be somewhat important. More importantly right now, it appears to be my size. Making my way towards it, I reach up and take the sword down from the wall. Gripping its hilt with one hand and the scabbard with the other, I try to slide the sword out of its scabbard. With a second attempt, it slides out without too much effort. Inspecting the blade, I'm surprised to see that no spots of rust covers the metal. "Link, look at this," Saria says. Having moved to stand beside me, she points at the scabbard. Looking closer, I can see that it is covered with what appear to be runes. A scabbard covered with runes of warding would indeed keep a sword in a fine state for a few hundred years. Now I'm also sure that it isn't just a regular sword. "Don't you think we should be going to the village now, Link?" Saria says, sounding worried. Nodding, I make my way to the section of the room where the shields are, and after a few seconds of browsing I find a small wooden shield which seems just right for me. Looking at Saria, I see that she has found a small shield and a morning star suitable for her and is making her way to the room's exit. Following Saria, we soon find ourselves again in the temple's main hall and descend down the stairs toward an unknown enemy and uncertain future. We keep up a rapid pace as we make our way to the village. I have attached the scabbard to my belt so that I don't have to carry it, and the sword inside it around all the time. It does, however, still feel weird to have it moving around on my side with every step I take. I keep the shield on my right arm, not having found a better way to put it, which wouldn't be hugely inconvenient if I were to suddenly encounter an enemy. Saria wears the morning star in her right hand, yet it seems as though she doesn't notice the weight of it, so focused is she on the task ahead. After discussing strategy, the first moment after setting out, agreeing that our goal is to rescue as many Kokiri as possible, and to make the Forest Temple our base of operations, no further word is uttered the rest of the journey until we get near the village. The first sign of trouble we come across is a rather unusual spiderweb. Not only is it unusually large in that it could comfortably hold a Kokiri or two, it almost seems to radiate darkness, an experience which is hard to properly describe. After some scouting of the area, we determined that things seemed safe for now, so we set off once again for the village. Quickening our pace, we watched and listened carefully, not in the mood to meet whatever made that spiderweb we encountered earlier. Then we get our first indication of what we are up against, and a rather vivid confirmation of Hako's story. Not that we needed much of a confirmation. Hanging from a tree, we see a large cocoon, made from what appears to be spider silk. As we get closer, we can make out what's inside. A head, body, hands. An entire kokiri is trapped inside the cocoon. Revolted by the sight, we move away from the tree, looking around us as though the same fate is about to befall us as well. When after a few moments we still haven't seen or heard anything, we move closer to the cocoon again. Taking my sword out of its scabbard, I attempt to cut the cocoon loose from the string suspending it from a branch. To my surprise, the sword cuts through the centimeter-thick spider silk as though through a blade of grass. With a lot of noise, with us both of us on our toes in the quiet forest, the cocoon lands on the ground, though its occupant doesn't make any sounds. With a few more cuts from my sword, the cocoon soon falls apart, leaving the kokiri inside freed from its embrace. I recognize him as Mido, a rather bossy kokiri who likes to make life difficult for me at times, yet not even he deserves such a fate. When I check his pulse, I am relieved to find the pulse, although weak. Watching Mido's ashen face, I look for any sign that he is recovering, unsure of what else may have happened to him. Saria also checks Mido's vital signs. After a few moments he says, "I think he has been poisoned. Look at these red marks here on his legs, right where the fabric is torn away. They remind me of bite marks made by some insects and spiders." Looking at the locations he indicates, I can only agree with her assessment. The question now is what we should do with poor Mido. "You think the poison will kill him?" I asked Saria. She shakes her head. "It's hard to say. Some spiders will only paralyze the prey. Others use their venom to liquefy their insides. Considering that Mido is still alive, even though he must have been here a while, suggests that he is only paralyzed. There is no telling how long the effect will last, however. In the end, we decide to leave Mido behind, covered with some leaves, moss and vegetation to camouflage him. There is no way we could drag him and anyone else we may encounter in a similar state back to the forest temple with us. Apparently our only choice is to find the source of this all and deal with it, whatever it and dealing with it may involve. As we resume our march to the village, I notice how grim Saria looks shortly before realizing that I probably have a similarly grim expression on my own face. I can feel a part of my subconsciousness tugging at me for attention. Before I can push it away, some fragments of the nightmare I had days ago appear in front of my mind's eye. For a moment, I can feel the scorching heat of the all-consuming flames, the feeling of sheer desperation and hopelessness, and the wrongness of it all again. Then it's gone, and it is just Saria, me, and the forest, which feels more unfamiliar to the both of us than it has since we were born. The sight of the village itself is if possible even less cheerful than we could have imagined. Completely abandoned, with signs of violence and the rush to escape visible everywhere, such as a few overturned chairs in front of one house with one of them seemingly ripped apart and makeshift weapons lying abandoned on the ground, some of them damaged or even broken in half. I imagine those weapons being used against the exoskeleton of some monstrous spider, for it to then grab the weapon with its mouthparts and cleanly severing it in half. I increase the grip on my sword, which I've kept ready even before we entered the village. "Link, look here." I see that Saria points at a few houses of which the entrances are covered by spider webs. Either kokiri are being trapped inside, or the kokiri don't want anyone to enter or hide in those houses. Looking around, it seems as though every house's entrance has been sealed this way. Cautiously moving on, we still don't see any trace of the spiders themselves. We begin to hope that perhaps this was just a raid, and the spiders are now all gone. Before we can begin to feel optimistic about this though, we encounter more and more cocoons of kokiri who didn't escape, until eventually we come across a large number of cocoons lying on the ground, leaning against a tree or rock, or suspended from a branch like Mido before. Looking around, I still can't see or hear anything which could be one of the spiders. The forest itself, the village, even the ground appears to be in the thralls of some kind of unnatural silence. As we move closer to the largest collection of cocoons, our footsteps sound strangely muffled. With each breath that each of us takes, and with each sound that we make with our feet or with our gear, we both cringe as though we are about to make something dark, something which is lurking in the shadows, gradually more aware of our presence. I can hear my own heartbeat, clearly while sweat rounds down my face and is making my hands slippery. Moving with our backs angled together, so as to leave no side undefended, Saria and I make it to the cocoons. "What now?" Saria asked me. "You remember Haku talking about the shadow covering the great Deku tree? I think we'll find the source of all this there." Nodding, Saria looks in the general direction of the great Deku tree. While it's somewhat hard to make out from this distance, the forest there does seem to be darker, less vibrant than before. "Let's go." After uttering these words, Saria resumes talking, walking towards our new destination with me following closely behind her. Something seems wrong though. I can't place it, but it's as though something has shifted or changed. Shaking my head, I wonder whether it isn't just something I'm imagining. Then I hear something big land behind me. Turning around, I spot a bulking, 8-legged form looking at me with its many eyes. It's larger than any animal I've seen before, at least 1.5 times as tall as me, and undoubtedly more than a match for a single Kiri, let alone an army of them. Realizing that I will become Spiderfoot in a moment, if I don't do something just about right now, I raise my shield and sword and assume a defensive posture. "Look out, spider!" I yell at Saria, who is still standing behind me as far as I know and hope. "There may be more of them," I hear Saria reply, indicating that she has already noticed the spider which I'm facing now and is scanning the surroundings for more threats. Our hopes of the threat having vanished after initial carnage apparently were indeed futile, and we won't get out of this without a few battles. Right now I find myself completely focused on surviving my first battle. Although I do have some experience fighting using wooden sticks with other Kokiri, it isn't quite the same as facing an armored 8-legged spider, much larger than myself, and very much capable of putting an end to my existence with a single, careless swipe of one of its legs. The spider suddenly moves towards me, extending one of its legs in what seems to be an attempt to pin me to the ground, or otherwise incapacitate me. Not following any kind of strategy, I just do the first thing which comes up in me, and that is to deflect the spider leg with my shield. Putting it at an angle to use the leg's own momentum against it, then I swipe my shield out wide, while I bring down my sword on the leg. As the sword cuts through the spider's leg, it's as thick as a sizable tree branch with apparently the same ease as the spider's silk strands before, I notice that I hardly feel amazed anymore at the miraculous sharpness of my sword. Crying out in rage, with a very shrill voice, the spider thrashes around, blinded by pain. Seemingly remembering the cause of this sudden injury, the spider focuses its attention on me again, and this time seems intent on attacking me directly, using its fangs or mouth parts as it rushes towards me, that or bury me with its sheer bulk. Foregoing strategy again, and instead just relying on my instincts, I jump forward, then roll as I hit the ground. Due to proper timing or just dumb luck, I find myself right underneath the spider's head. As I regain my footing, I jump upwards while keeping the sword from whatever it hit and thus keep the sword extended above my head. And an incredibly shrill, skull-piercing noise fills my head. As I extract my sword from whatever it hit and dash from underneath and away from the spider, I hear the noise abruptly stop. Looking over my shoulder, I see that my enemy no longer is standing on his legs, but is lying crumpled on the ground. Noticing no immediate danger near me, I skid to a halt and turn around. As the pounding of my heart subsides and the world around me returns to its normal colors instead of the reddish fog covering it during the fight, I suddenly realized that I'm the victor. My first fight with one of the monsters, which have completely reduced the entire Kokiri village to a collection of cocoons, has resulted in the monster suffering a lethal blow, while I am left completely unharmed. Looking at the sword, which I'm still holding in my left hand, I notice spider gore dripping from it. As I wipe my sword clean using some grass, I suddenly notice that I'm no longer holding my shield. Looking back at the spider carcass, I can see the shield lying a few meters in front of it. I must have thrown it away before or after I jumped. Walking towards it and picking it up, feeling relieved to see it still intact other than some scratches on the front from deflecting the spider leg. I try not to look too much at the now dead eyes of the spider and a puddle of gore pooling on the ground around its head section. Shaking my head clear of the last remnants of the battle lust, I am suddenly reminded of Saria. Maybe more monsters attacked while I was busy fighting this one? I didn't see any more of them earlier, but maybe... Yet as I turn around to look at the place where I left Saria, I see only her standing there, staring in profound amazement at the carnage that has just taken place. As I walk towards her, she appears to restrain herself from moving backwards, away from me. Noticing her obvious discomfort, I halt and assume a more relaxed posture. "What's wrong?" I ask Saria. As I try to read her facial expression, she turns away her head. "Nothing, it's just... With that spider, you didn't seem like an inexperienced warrior. You were absolutely amazing with how you killed the spider and not being hit once. It is scary." "Scary?" I ask. Thinking for a moment, I resume, "It took me by surprise too. I didn't really think about what I was doing, I just followed my instincts, I guess. Not that it explains anything." Looking at my sword, I consider the possibility of it being the source of my sudden fighting prowess. There is no way to tell for either of us what a magical sword may be capable of. At any rate, it is of secondary concern at this point. We still got evil to eradicate. Focusing my attention on Saria again, I tell her, "I'm fairly sure that I'm still the same Link you've always known though. For all I know, this sword," I lift my sword up a bit, "is what is making me capable of this. At any rate, it doesn't matter. We got a big task ahead of us, and apparently we really got a chance now." Nodding, Saria seems to relax at my words, evoking a sensation of relief in me. "I guess it's pointless to worry about it right now," she says. "Let's make haste." It will still take us about an hour to reach the meadow of the Great Deku Tree, even at the rapid pace with which we are walking. We find ourselves surrounded by mostly dense forest, interrupted only occasionally by small meadows and the like. Every second we half expect another spider or two to drop out of the trees. Every second that they do not, we grow more tense. After traveling about half the distance, Saria suddenly motions for me to stop, as she does the same. Putting a hand to her ear, she appears to be listening intently. Controlling my own breathing, I attempt to focus on the sounds around me. At first, I hear nothing but her own labored breathing, with the forest itself being still as lively as the inside of a tomb. Then I begin to hear it too. A series of slow, creaking noises, like the wind gently bending the branches of the trees. Except that there is not even a breeze right now. "Get ready," I tell Saria, while I assume a defensive posture. Quickly obeying, Saria grabs her morning star firmly in her right hand alongside her shield on her left arm and positions herself back to back with me. Both of us look anxiously at the branches of the surrounding trees, knowing that multiple spiders will soon drop from them. The creaking noises become stronger and sound closer with every passing second. They must be right next to us now. Then the noises stop. Feeling cold shivers travel down my spine. As my stomach appears to be twisting itself around, I increase the grip on my sword and ready my shield to deflect any incoming object which won't instantly crush me. Like another spider. Moments pass as the two of us wait in silence. The urge to run away keeps nagging in the back of my mind, yet I forcefully push it away. We both know that if we run, we are dead. Spiders will drop on top, before and in front of us, cutting us off and leaving us without any defensible position. More moments pass, and I silently curse as drops of sweat travel down my face, causing a tickling sensation or get into my eyes, irritating them. I begin to wish that the spiders would just get this all over with. Perhaps they will just wait for us to make the first move. Perhaps they'll wait for hours, long beyond our endurance. I can feel Saria tensing up behind me as well. Neither of us is having an easy time right now, and it will only get worse. A rustle in the canopy of leaves above us is the first sign that the standoff is about to be broken. Determination replacing fear and doubt, we ready us as the first two spiders land to the side of us, to be quickly joined by two more at the other side, another one right in front of me. Waving their front legs menacingly, the 5 spiders make shrill, chattering noises, as though they are communicating, or just trying to frighten us. Realizing that by leaving the path in front of Saria open, the spiders are inviting us to make a run for it, and turn us all into easy prey, making it obvious that these aren't dumb arachnids. They seem to have covered all the bases. Either the prey runs and is quickly captured, or they fight, and are instantly overwhelmed by the more than 2-to-1 odds in favor of the spiders. It seems a hopeless situation for us both. Taking a deep breath, I once again try to find the same sensation I felt before, when I faced the first spider. Instead of allowing myself to realize the hopelessness of the situation, I surrender myself to whatever it is I feel inside of me, be it instincts or just a sword controlling my emotions. Feeling the strange strength flowing through me, I yell, "Now!" right before I drop my shield, run forward and jump higher than I've ever jumped before, to land on the back of the spider in front of me, stabbing my sword into the creature's flesh to stop my forward momentum and make a backflip, while simultaneously extracting the sword from the spider. Reversing my sword while in mid-air, I allow myself to land on my back, while the sword slides through the creature's head section, instantly killing it. When I feel life flowing out of the spider I just killed, I quickly extract my sword and slide down towards the ground. Even before my feet touch the ground, I'm already running towards the nearest spider, which still doesn't seem to have fully comprehended what has just happened. Out of a corner from my eye, I see that Saria has engaged one of the other spiders and thus crippled 2 of its legs with what must have been powerful blows. Smiling in grim satisfaction, I ready my sword and run right underneath the spider I'm targeting. Keeping my sword level with the upper section of the spider's legs, I cut through all the legs at one side, evoking ear-splitting shrieks from the creature right before it tumbles on the ground, unable to do more than drag itself around with only 4 of its legs remaining. The spider closest to the one I just took care of now turns towards me and dashes at me, clearly infuriated. Before it can even get close, however, I throw my sword at the creature, as though it is a spear. Within a second, it crashes to the ground with the sword embedded between its eyes. The remaining spider, which wasn't engaged yet, now also rushes towards me, even after seeing the gruesome fate of its 2 companions. Realizing that it will take me too long to make my way to my last kill, extract the sword and face the oncoming spider in time, I instead grab a sturdy tree branch, which is lying near me on the ground, and begin running towards this new enemy. Before I get too close, I stick the branch into the ground, causing my momentum to be changed and lift me into the air. Keeping a tight grip on the branch, I land on the spider's back, on its midsection. Not losing any time, I turn around towards the head of the creature and locate a connection between the head and midsections. Waiting for the right moment, when a large enough gap appears, I quickly insert the thinnest side of the branch into the gap and push with all my might. The branch slowly finds its way under the edge of the exoskeleton until I deem it to be far enough. I then push down on the branch, using it as a lever. The spider's shrieks are even worse than before with the others. In intense pain, it attempts to throw me off its back by shaking from side to side, but the branch is too deeply embedded for this and it provides me with the support I need to hold on. Then the creature tilts to one side, apparently to roll over onto its back. This is the moment I've been waiting for. When the spider has nearly rolled onto its back, I let go of the branch and jump off, breaking my fall by rolling until the tree suddenly stopped my momentum. Groaning in pain, I quickly surmised that my improvised plan has worked as intended by the lack of shrieking. Getting up, I look at the carnage and see the first two dead spiders. Another one dragging itself around on its four legs, apparently attempting to escape, and my last victim which has driven the branch into its brain using its own weight. The last remaining spider, which Sari is battling, has found itself on the losing side as well. Having used the Morning Star to its full potential, the creature can barely stand on its maimed legs, let alone menace an attack on the agile Kokiri dashing around it, inflicting more damage with every blow. Quickly retrieving my sword from the spider carcass, I move towards Saria's location. Need any help finishing up? I ask her. Go right ahead. I think I've had my fill of battle today, she responds, while easily dodging a few more clumsy attacks from my enemy. Besides, it would take many more blows with my weapon to do what your sword can do with a single swipe. Grinning, I move towards the crippled spider, which still makes a feeble attempt at attacking me. I easily dodge it and end its suffering by a swift blow to the head section. As the creature collapses onto the ground, I make my way towards Saria. Are you okay? I ask her, while checking her for any scrapes or more serious injuries. You nearly got me a few times, but other than a few bruises, I think I'm alright. You want to rest for a bit? Looking around her at the gruesome scene, she shakes her head. I don't want to stay here any longer than necessary. And besides, we still have a test to finish. I doubt that this will be our last encounter with the spiders as well. Nodding in agreement, we fix our clothes, which have gotten quite dirty with the last fight. Not to mention that they aren't exactly the perfect kind of clothing to be worn in battles. After I retrieve my shield and we both finish cleaning our weapons, I make a last check that we're both ready. After that, we both set out on the last stretch of our journey to whatever it is that we'll find at the end of it. And that is the end of chapter 2. It's quite another 10 pages. So, not a cliffhanger, obviously, because that's how you write the proper stories. Still needs a bit more editing, clearly. But notes at the beginning I had made a small editing error, and that's was a bit confusing. That's why I did a bit of stumble there. Yeah, there are a couple more chapters after this, and a bit of a spoiler. Next chapter will have an even bigger fight in it. It's I guess that when I wrote this originally, I was quite inspired by the original story, obviously, and the original battles in it. But you know, you want a bit more. It needs a bit more of the epicness. It's cool and everything to have the whole, in Legend of Zelda, pretty much all of those games, and especially Ocarina of Time and similar ones, you have this whole structure with the overworld, and you've got a couple of dungeons, and only in the dungeons do you really have the big fight and the big monsters, and the rest of the fighting isn't really happening outside those dungeons. So I guess the biggest change in this chapter compared to the original story is really that what is happening is not just like the overworld in the original game does not really change. Like, even when the horrible things have happened and calamity has happened and everything is horrible, you will still have the same characters, the same NPCs, non-playing characters in the village doing the same things, and it makes for this kind of surreal experience, I guess, where nothing really changes in some areas, even when, I mean, how villages could be razed to the ground, but one village next over, they're still just doing the same things as before, or whether you the big evil person, monster, can be right across from the village and just whatever. And I guess if you in this kind of retelling, then it definitely adds a bit more to the excitement. And if you had a game like this, you would essentially make it a bit more dynamic. The world itself, it really gets affected by what's happening. It's really part of the story. And I think it's definitely, because there are some further elements in Ocarina of Time in the game where the world does change because of some things that happen in the story, and the impact it actually has on just the world and the characters in it is pretty significant and really adds to the overall experience. So I think it's an important addition to add there, and that's one reason why I decided to add it as well. So next time I may do the third chapter, or I may do another short story in between. So I have to see what feels right. I have also no idea what the actual status of the third chapter of this retelling, because I haven't looked at it in years. It having been written like a decade ago, and of course I haven't read it since. Why would I? I thought I knew it, what I'd written, and then you're editing it, and you're still like, that's not. It's more than what I remembered, or slightly different, and that's also kind of cool to really experience it, those changes. So, really interesting. So, thank you for listening, and see you next time. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and become a patron, and all that fun stuff, because stories are cool. See you next time.